What's up, everybody, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Anita Myron. I am a mom of two beautiful children, one adopted, one biological, and I have four fur babies and a loving husband. I also run a multi-seven-figure business out of my home and have been doing that for 8 years. I also have a Instagram blog. I blog on Instagram, and I do so on Facebook too. So I wanted to talk to you guys about mental sickness, mental illness, mental health, whatever you want to call it. I want to talk to you guys about that. There's this stigma, and even I carry it with me every single day, that if you have depression, anxiety, OCD, if you feel anything, even schizophrenia or bipolar syndrome, if you think and feel that way, there's this stigma that you're crazy or something's wrong with you or you need to stop talking about it, or only certain people are that way. Only certain people look, act, and have problems with mental health. And if you take medication, something is wrong with you, and medication is really bad for you. I want to tell you guys that none of that is true. And if you have issues with mental health, you're not a bad person. You're not broken. You're not crazy. Something's not wrong with you. And if you decide to take medication, that's the best decision you can make for your overall health, because in order for you to be healthy, you need to be mentally healthy. And so it's okay to take precautions and take measures to take care of yourself. Why am I telling you this? Well, I was inspired to make this video because I would say I have a pretty successful business and a beautiful, healthy, happy family. I conduct myself, I would say, in a professional manner, but I have struggled with depression, anxiety, OCD for almost my entire life. So I was actually diagnosed in 2017 with bipolar 2 disorder, which is very different from bipolar 1. Bipolar 1 involves like extreme mania and depression and going up and down and up and down. Bipolar 2 is more along the lines of depression, anxiety, OCD, and insomnia. There isn't a real manic or depressive phase. And I don't get that phase, or the manic and the depression waves, but I have had all of the issues that come with obsessive compulsive disorder, with obsessive thinking, and compulsions. And I have had severe anxiety and depression since I was a little girl. And I remember the first time I had an anxiety attack, my parents were fighting. I believe somebody threw something at someone and it got near me. My parents were not looking to hurt me in any way, but they were hurting each other. And I think I was 6 or 7 that when that happened, I threw up all over my mom. I was so devastated, so afraid, and felt so anxious. My body and myself, I just didn't even know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do with all those emotions. And so I learned to stomach them for much of my life. Whenever I felt anxiety, or even what I didn't know back then was depression, I didn't tell anybody because I was ashamed, number one. Also, I didn't know how to put it in words. I didn't know how to say, hey, I feel this way, because I thought feeling that way was just how life felt. And I didn't know that you didn't have to feel that way until I was an adult. So my teenage years, I went in and out of depressive spells, depression, never medicated for it because I never really told anybody. And then as I went into college and levels of stress started to increase, I started to have more and more, I would say, mental breakdowns or mental breaks. And I would get depression and anxiety. If a boy broke up with me, I would get anxiety and depression. If I upset my professor, I would be anxious or depressed. And that just kept going and going and going. And then in college, I started to self-medicate with alcohol. I noticed that sensation of anxiety, that dread, that feeling when you wake up and you just feel dread about your day, feeling kind of nauseous, having butterflies, that went away when I was drunk. So I picked up drinking. At the age of 17, 18, I was drinking. And then all the way up until I was 25, I would say, I had a bit of a drinking issue. I relied heavily on alcohol to help me cope with my anxiety and depression. So I met a really great guy who's now my husband, and he made me so incredibly happy. We were best friends in a time when I really needed somebody. And we got really close. And then out of nowhere, my depression, anxiety, and OCD took the best of me. I remember having obsessive thoughts on whether or not he loved me back or if I loved him. I had obsessive thoughts about whether or not we were going to make it. I obsessed over every argument. Then I drove myself into some insomnia issues, and then I went into severe anxiety, and then inevitably fell into a dark depression. And the depression wasn't just some mild depression. This was the first time it ever got to the point of being suicidal depression. And I share this with you without fear, without any kind of, I guess you can say, stigma, because I want you to know that what I went through, millions of people go through it every day, and I'm not special and I'm not alone. But when you go through anxiety and depression, you most certainly feel alone, and you most certainly feel like it's never going to go away and that life is just that way. So when I met my husband, I had all these mental health things that I was battling. I decided to start speaking to a doctor because I wanted to be better for him. It was no longer just me in the picture. It was both of us. And we were planning on getting married and starting a family. And so I was dedicated to getting my mental health on track and never having those ups and downs again. So I went in to talk to a psychiatrist. And at that point in time, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, just basic GAD, basic depression. And when I got diagnosed with that, I thought to myself, holy smokes, I must be sick. I must be broken. Something must be wrong with me because I have a mental illness and I have to take medication. So I got on a medication, Lexapro was the brand, and I felt clouds, these really light, dark clouds, gray clouds that I kind of carried with me here and there throughout my life. I felt those things split apart. I felt the clouds part, and I, for the first time in my life, felt balanced. I had no idea what that felt like until I took the medication. And my grief over the medication, my anger with myself for having to take this medication kind of went away because I realized how big of a difference it made for me. And so I stayed on that medication. I even moved to Zoloft when I became pregnant with my daughter, and I stayed without depression for many years, which was awesome. And I still carried that stigma with me, and I still beat myself up over the mental health issues that I had, and I hid them from people. I stopped talking about them again. And so when I had my daughter in 2012, postpartum depression creeped back in. I had weaned off my medication, and postpartum depression creeped in. And this time it was postpartum OCD. I had a lot of obsessive thoughts about life, about harming myself, about all kinds of things that were not truly me. They were not who I am today or was ever. And so I was very embarrassed. And again, I didn't tell anybody about it, and I kept it to myself. I bottled it in for months, and then I bottled it in for years. And I coped with wine and coffee and just whatever, and food, whatever could sort of numb and dial down that pain. And then eventually it kind of went away for a little while. And then I had a really stressful situation in my business, and just life got to be really heavy in 2015. And that's when I had the worst, I guess you can say, bout of depression and anxiety I have ever had. And I'm only telling this to you because I want you to believe me when I tell you I've struggled with mental illness most of my life. I had obsessive compulsive thinking. I was obsessed with whether or not I was going to become ill like my dad. Hi, baby. Hi, Peanut. I was obsessed on whether or not I would become ill like my dad. I grew up knowing that my dad had schizophrenia. So I was always very afraid that that was going to be the case for me. And that led into a theme of obsession, and it led to depression. And I kept that quiet for a long time, refused to go on medication because I felt like I was surrendering to mental illness. Baby? So I wanted to tell you all of this, and there's more to my story, but my little baby boy here woke up early from his nap. There's more to my story, so I'm going to make a part 2 of this video, but I wanted to kind of get you started on understanding and learning about me and my history with mental illness. But I want you to see also, my point of this video is to see that I'm your everyday happy-go-lucky mom, and you would never see it that I have struggled with mental illness. And right now, I've since 2017 have been in recovery, have not had symptoms since going on a particular medication. So anyway, next video, I'll be talking more about that and sharing more about my story.